We are now into the letter O of our presentation, Organized Local Movements. What we are talking about here are BDS campaigns, boycott, divestment, and sanction. Boycotts involve the withdrawal of support from products and services. Divestment campaigns pressure investors to withdraw their support from companies, and sanction campaigns are done to put pressure on our government officials. Many of us have already started to practice patriotic commerce, aka boycotts. I wanted to transfer to the T-Mobile patriot. But we also must institute our own BDS movements against the influences of American Marxism, adopt the cloud and pivot approach of overwhelming the system so that we can crash it, blame it, and then retake it, and take a page from Saul Alinsky's book, Rules for Radicals, namely rule number 13. Take the target, freeze it, personalize it, polarize it. Our next presenter will teach us how to identify organizations that share our values and how to pressure the ones that don't. Known for her uncensored political analysis, this conservative activist works diligently to protect our First Amendment rights in the courts. She has one anti-SLAPP freedom of speech defense pending and will soon be a plaintiff in one of the largest lawsuits ever filed against the National Association of Realtors over their new speech ethics rules, which violate the constitutional freedoms of its members. I have already felt that wrath myself personally. In 2014, she ran for Congress in Connecticut's 2nd District, which encompasses the eastern third of our state. From there, she took to the airwaves with her Lori on Liberty show, and since that was removed for telling too much truth, she's a weekly guest on WTRC's Talk Connecticut's morning show with Gary Byron every Wednesday morning at 7:10 a.m. Would you please give a warm welcome to this Connecticut Orange Swamp Yankee with direct lineage to the original Plymouth Plantation settlement, Lori Hopkins Cavanaugh.
I'm going to throw this speech out now because now I know I'm old. I'm old. And the interesting thing about the boycotts, divestment, and sanctions, and I just want to add to that introduction and say thank you for introducing me like this, because really corporatism, I think, is the bad word of the day. The government couldn't get away with what they're doing without the corporations assisting them. And so that's a really big problem. And we haven't done enough, right? We have not done enough to, we've gone up, there's some great movements in Connecticut. I've been involved in a lot of them. We've gone up to Hartford. I did 2 health district protests. I did a protest for masking out of in Norwich at Dodd Stadium, where they set up testing. Of course, we can't have sports anymore. We have to have testing centers. So we did one there. We were shoved out in the street, 20 cop cars coming after us. This is a bunch of old people, you know, and a couple of little kids trying to say hi to the policeman. In the pouring rain, we were taken out of a vacant parking lot, shoved in the road. And this is because the hospital systems are getting rich on COVID, right? When I ran for U.S. Congress, that's Obamacare came out. It was published, Affordable Care Act. And at that time, I think it was 20,000 pages. And on every page, there were these huge blanks. Blanks. Fill in the blanks and you get what we've just gone through. ACA, when the Affordable Care Act was passed, I was running for U.S. Congress and I was trying so hard to stop that from happening because I could see the writing on the wall. Our healthcare system has been usurped. Our doctors get paid to euthanize people. Our medical system is killing us. And that's a very serious, it's not what I wanted to speak about though. What I wanted to talk about is that, and again, since I ran for U.S. Congress against Joe Courtney, and I know we have Mike France here, he has a big road ahead of him, but I have to say, unless you're following Joe around by his coattails everywhere he goes, and unless you are involved in front of these people that he's talking to, again, we're preaching to the choir. We can talk to each other all day long, and we do have to come together and have that group of people, that critical mass of us, and we do exist. We are a critical mass. I'm telling you all. The people who are silent, they're the minority. I have to tell you, they are. We just need courage, a little bit of courage. And I'll tell you what, they back down so fast. They can't handle it. confronting people. I'm a confrontational person. I think Mike Grants would agree with that. I'm a very confrontational person. And people have told me my whole career, you're handling that wrong. Oh, wrong, Lori. When they tore down the Columbus statue in New London, and I said, you're taking away our Columbus statue. Oh, no, we're not. You're just handling this all wrong. And 2 years later, the Columbus statue was gone. All these little times when people could have stood up and stopped that Columbus statue from being taken down, they didn't have enough courage, or it didn't matter enough at that time. And for those of us who, and many of you in the room, I know you know what I know, so I'm not trying to preach to you or think that I'm smarter than you. I'm not. I might know a little bit more because I do a lot of research, but I'm not afraid to talk about it. And we're finding that those of us who do speak loudly and clearly are shut down so fast. I have been censored for years and years. In 2014, Facebook was censoring me, and I said something. I remember at the convention, Republican convention, I said, I'm being censored by Facebook, and I had a Republican look at me, and she was the RTC chair in Ledger, Connecticut, and she said, and Mike knows her as well, and said to me, that's a conspiracy theory. Facebook isn't really censoring. Okay, so it's kind of hard to know what's happening before it happens, right? And I think we all have a little bit of crystal ball. If you do enough research, you kind of own a crystal ball. And if you do the right kind of research and you go to the right locations, which is the primary source of the information, how many of you have gone to the United Nations website recently? Okay. If you don't look at the United Nations website on pretty much a monthly basis, you don't know what's going to, your future is going to happen to you. The World Economic Forum, do you know they have a website? The World Economic Forum. These are the people that want to chip you via the vaccine, right? How many times have you gone to the World Economic Forum? I'll tell you, you start going to these websites and look, they tell you, it's all transparent. They say right on, Trump cannot be president in 2020. They said that in October of 2019 at Event 201 in New York City with Bill and Melinda Gates, Johns Hopkins University, the World Economic Forum, the Chinese Communist CDC, and our own traitorous CDC. Sitting around the table with Avril Haines. Does anyone know who Avril Haines is? She's the head of she's the head of national security in our country. Avril Haines is the head of national security in our country, and nobody even knows her name. She is also the one who orchestrated Event 201. She is the one who gave us COVID, in a way. Okay, so I think we need to know who we're dealing with. That's one of the problems we have, is we're not knowledgeable, because where would we get this information? The newspapers, the news media will not publish the truth. They won't. And they've been paid off not to publish the truth. So now we have COVID again, talking about COVID. Do you know in the state of Connecticut there is a law right now that every newspaper and every magazine and every radio station is obliged by law to run any ad regarding medical information without censorship? Okay, so I was censored from Patch.com when I did an event at the Hopkins Health District on state property with Dr. Zelenko, and there are people here that were at that event. We were hacked, probably by our own state FBI. When Dr. Zelenko, who is a Hasidic Jew, and who is responsible, from what I understand, of really pushing the hydroxychloroquine and the, all of the therapies that many people understand work beautifully, vitamin D, vitamin C, zinc, simple stuff that fights COVID. We were hacked, and our whole program was shut down because they don't want the truth out. But the law exists that if we got together and said, we're going to run an ad, and this is one idea, this is one way to fight them. We run an ad, we pay for it, we all get together and pitch in $10. We run a radio campaign, newspaper campaign, and television campaign in the state of Connecticut talking about testing fraud, case fraud, medical fraud, mask fraud, and Governor Lamont's participation in fraud. Down that ad, we can sue the newspaper. You want to own Channel 8? You don't believe it? Channel 61? This is the way to do it. I'm telling you, this will work. It's one of many ideas that can creatively apply to use our current laws. I have to tell you, the Connecticut Constitution, guys, is amazing. It's an amazing document. It's better than the U.S. Constitution. I think Hal would agree with that. Our Constitution state has one of the most precious documents known to mankind, yet we never take it out, and they make us think that it doesn't exist anymore. And the reason they're able to do this is because we don't have constitutional courts. We don't have constitutional judges. We have political people sitting on benches and passing policy. I want to read to you one thing, and this was a year ago, March 1st. The state Supreme Court reaffirmed Governor Ned Lamont's pandemic-related emergency powers. That was a year ago. I think that was the most chilling jurisprudence decision in the history of our state. Okay. And the reason he says, and I have it here, he said, the court said, the governor ordered bars shut down, and this Casey's Irish Pub, Casey's Irish Pub story, they shut down her pub and she took him to court and she lost. Huh. That's just not fair. She shouldn't have lost because Lamont did not have the authority, but the courts gave him the authority. And what the plaintiff argued was that the order and the constitutionality of the state laws underpinning the governor's emergency declarations, they were unconstitutional. That's what she was saying. 30-page document. And the court decided as long as Governor Lamont is acting within this admittedly broad statutory and constitutional authority, which we conclude that he is, it is not the job of the court to second-guess policy decision makers. That's your court system. The court system that is supposed to be challenging policy decision makers has just declared that they will not be doing that. So anything Lamont wants is okay with our justices in the state of Connecticut. If that's not the most frightening thing, I want to talk about a couple other ones. Anne attended with me a criminal court hearing for a man by the name of Jonathan Wright. Does anybody know Jonathan Wright besides John Flynn? And by the way, John Flynn and many of us are working, there's a few of us working with the laws and the constitutionality and the state court system and the judges. Behind the scenes, we're trying very hard, spending money and dedicating ourselves to the corruption, but it's overwhelming because it's so corrupt. It's so widespread in Connecticut. I don't honestly know unless people go to jail, and we do see some people stepping down, being removed, and starting to see some things happening, investigations, but it has to be broken up in a major way because every court system in Connecticut is working against the constitutional rights of the citizenry. That is not sustainable. So we have this other gentleman, Jonathan Wright, who wrote on a tweet, he had a tweet, and said the penalty for treason, the penalty for treason is, does anyone know? You all? I'm calling the FBI right now on every one of you. You are all going to jail for third-degree threatening. Second-degree threatening, I can't remember if it was second-degree threatening. This man, Jonathan Wright, an 8-year Army veteran, Air Force veteran, 8-year Air Force veteran, Waterford, Connecticut, doesn't even own a firearm. The state police is watching me all the time. The state police is watching many of us, I can guarantee that, and they are with the FBI, and this has been in the national news now, I think people are starting to realize this, collaborating to come and use their force against us in the state of Connecticut. State police arrested this guy for third-degree threatening for saying what you just said. How can that be America? How can we be living in this country now and allowing this to happen? And you know who went to court? There was no media there. I went, Ann came, and one other person came. And we stood there like, you know, you can't take away our First Amendment rights. But you know what? The judge did, and I was the only one listening to this. This is fascinating. Criminal court. I don't know if you've ever been to it. I've only been once, so this was the time. I'm going to be there again, I'm sure. But criminal court. The judge opens the whole proceeding with this man who Lamont had arrested by the state police. Lamont arrested this man for saying treason equals death. So I'm in the courtroom and listening to the judge, and I never heard anything like this in my life. And she started out by saying, if anyone in this court believes that their rights have been taken away from them, now is the time to speak. And I'm watching Wright sitting there with his attorney pleading guilty to second-degree harassment, getting put into a mental institution for evaluation if he is ever going to be allowed to be free. They sealed the case. Your First Amendment, I'm telling you guys, this should be chilling. This should be chilling to every one of us. This guy, you cannot speak. They're going to arrest you. So be careful of what you say. Do not believe you have the right to say it. You don't in Connecticut. And if you're going to be caught, the last thing I want to say, and I know that there's time in this, I'm going to wage a lawsuit against the National Association of Realtors, and it's going to be my corporatist gift to the United States. There's a lot of people that want to do this. They passed a new ethics. This is the largest trade organization. If you want to get on the MLS, you're a member of NAR or CAR. They've passed a new ethics regulation regarding speech. And everything I think, say, and do is now controlled by my trade organization. Not going to happen. So I had a Karen in a lawsuit, in a law firm, a paralegal, in my own personal closing, who messed up the closing. This law firm messed up the closing, gypped me of $850, and I'm trying to collect my debt. Can't collect the debt? They don't seem to care. Guess what? You can't go to the closings if you're a real estate agent with some attorneys because of COVID. So they have a big sticker on the end of their email. Real estate agents are not allowed to attend any closings. So we can't stop anything bad from happening at a closing because we're not there to stop it from happening. So I was locked out of a closing because of COVID. Then they took $850 of my money. Then they wouldn't give it back to me, and I'm trying nicely to collect it from the attorney instead of going after the buyer because it's the attorney's fault. So I go after this law firm. I said, please just return the money and get it. It's owed me. And I said, by the way, could you please remove the COVID BS at the end of your email? It triggers me. She called me a racist. She not only called me a racist, she filed a complaint. I have the first complaint in the state of Connecticut with the National Association of Realtors for being unprofessional. They want to charge me $9,000 for saying that to her in a private email regarding my own personal transaction. So I am fighting, and it's going to cost me boatloads of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars. My husband, my poor husband, I'm so glad he's not sitting here right now. He can testify that we have made so many sacrifices as a family for our political belief system. I want you to believe it's so important. And I want to tell you, I love all of you for what you stood for and fighting for. Jane, God bless you for all of your work. All of you. Leslie, all of you. I can't see everybody. I'm slightly blind. But I have to tell you that we need to take our court systems back. Our Constitution back. And until you're ready to stand up and say, I'm not wearing the mask, I'm not putting up with your garbage anymore, and you don't have the authority over me, and risk everything to do it. I just, I really believe defiance. I want to close on
Viva
that.
Canada! Viva Canada!
We're next. We are next. The FEMA camps are there. The United Nations was invited to police our cities by President Obama and Loretta, whatever her name was. Loretta Lynch said, come on, UN, you can police our cities because Americans need to be subservient to the United Nations global communist government system. That is what ails us. If we don't get rid of the UN, this will never end. Defiance is necessary. I'm a defiant person, but it is necessary to fight treason. When peaceful protesters can no longer gather and voice their opinions in public, then we are not free people anymore. And that's what we face right now. And at this time, our freedoms are but a facade. And I'm sorry to say that. The political system is really broken along with everything else. So I think Dr. Zelenko gave us one great piece of advice in Norwich, Connecticut at the health district while the FBI was hacking into him with Islamic, oh my goodness. Here we have a Jewish Hasidic doctor, priceless gift to humanity. And they hack us with Muslim, Arabic profanity the whole time. And so they didn't stop us, but what his message was, and I want to bring that to you today, you have to start with your local community, your neighbor, your local school board, forget about the big prize. They don't exist without the tools underneath. We need to go after the bureaucrats, the low-hanging fruit, and make them afraid for their future. Make them responsible. There's ways to do it legally, and that's what, you take that foundation out from under these so-called leaders, you watch Trudeau crumble like the, in the Slytherin that he is. All right, thank you so much, all of you. Have a wonderful day. Had their first meeting in my living room in Norwich, Connecticut. And and Dennis was there, and I don't know who else was there, but there may be a couple other people. But I got to tell you, at that time, these two guys didn't know where CTRA would go. They had no clue, and they were hilarious because they came out there and they had all their hopes and dreams on this organization in my living room, and they faced a pretty tough group of people. They did. And they put them through fire that night. And they lasted and they grew. And thank you so much for doing all you do. Thank you very much.